At one point in your life, you've probably looked back on the early development screenshots of a video game you love, and were surprised to see it came out the other end looking quite different. Even if you adore the title in question, it's hard not to ponder on how things could have turned out differently, and what the game might have looked like had it adhered more closely to its earliest draft. Faithfully recreating a title that is a living version of OMORI's earliest screenshots and assets was likely the mission statement behind the OMORIBOY mod for OMORI, a fan project that, while unfinished, does show promise. Going through it was kind of surreal. There's moments in this thing that are tonally at odds with what should usually go in an OMORI-styled story that makes me ask a lot of questions. But even for all its similarities to what OMORI would ultimately end up being, there are some elements in this mod that are unnervingly familiar. A long time ago, there was a prince who ruled over a great kingdom. The prince had many duties to attend to. He was able to help his subjects and performed for them on special occasions with his instrument. As time went on, however, the prince grew wary from his duties. The kingdom fell into disarray as the prince spent more time by himself instead of with his subjects. However, the prince had a wise, caring, and loving older sister. She was always there to steer the prince back onto the right path instead of him spending time alone. But as the years went by, the prince began to push his sister away too. The prince and his sister began to argue, sometimes for hours into the night. One night, the prince began to climb the tallest tower of the castle in an effort to escape his sister. The sister followed, begging and pleading for her brother to come back. The sister cornered her brother at the top of the tower, a storm raging overhead. The prince, overcome with hatred towards his sister, pushed her over the edge of the tower. Light illuminates everything, but casts on nothing. An infinitely expanding world characterized by no color and nothing to do stands before us. Basically a AAA game. To the surprise of no one, we start this mod off in white space. The animations when using interactables here do a solid job of showcasing the new art style. The taller form and lanky Kong arms do take some getting used to, but you'll ease into it nicely, owed to the considered illustrations and faithful art direction. We exit white space before coming across the gang for the first time, and there's voice acting?
Whoa!
Often it complements the character's dialogue enough, but on occasion I will hear voice lines that just make me laugh. As a group, we head up over the stairs and arrive at the playground, where we meet not Basil and Mari, but Flower and Tako-Chan. Flower is of course a stand-in for Basil, but I'd wager that Tako-Chan's not a one-for-one substitute for Sunny's sister. You'll still get advice from her though, but like Mari in the vanilla game, she is impressively unhelpful. Flower establishes himself as the timid photographer type, while Tako-Chan and Hiro have a flirtatious exchange. Also, there's a completely new photo book. Aubrey's expression in some of these just turned out perfect. The group decides to hang out at Flowers, but are intercepted by Burley, who wants them to help find her ball, which is as good an excuse as any to start exploring Headspace. We begin our journey through vast forest with some new visual flair in the form of these giant holes in the ground. Considering how many times I've seen this tile set across the OMORI projects I've played, I appreciate any change visually. We enter a battle for the first time, and Christ almighty, what in the world? Why is Kel the only person in their correct corner? This is simply way too much to process. Either way, battles are very much what you've come to expect from OMORI, but dressed in a new UI. There's a new battle theme too, so that's neat. We go through the usual ropes and are treated to multiple fights that teach us what each emotion does, and they're identical to how they function in base OMORI. Happiness increases your crit rate but lowers your accuracy, anger increases your damage but lowers your defense, and sadness increases your defense but lowers your attack. While it has been pointed out numerous times that OMORI has never lived up to the awesome premise of its emotion system, I still did have a lot of fun with it. I'd often try to make the enemy happy and pray they didn't hit me, like I did with my mom growing up. After completing the battle tutorial, we arrive in a village populated by bunnies. We see dialogue that's so unflinching, I'm surprised it's here at all, even for a fan work. It's hilarious, but obviously not the proper tone to set if you're looking to mirror some version of Omocat's vision. Whether this is placeholder text to get a quick laugh out of the player, or reflective of the final version of the mod, is unknown. I'd lean towards the former. We end up fighting the first boss of this mod, and towards the tail end of this battle we get to see a brand new team attack animation. Like the original game, this move basically serves as a win button. Upon defeating the boss, we're able to explore the underside of this bunny town.
This mod is like the bunny hater character's worst nightmare.
And if you head to the southmost point of this area, the purple interiors will give way to an endless checkered floor devoid of color. You'll hear a phone in the distance, but getting close to it reveals. I'm comfortable saying we're getting more than we bargained for searching for this ball. Aubrey suggests we head back to the carrot fields to see if the ball was there, and we just missed it. Returning there, we discover a note from the mini-boss in base OMORI, Kite Kid, that is very questionable.
What's that piece of paper on the ground? Dear white kid and friends, I took your ball to simply entertain my companion.
Kite Kid stole the ball and encourages us to confront him directly, so we do just that. He starts having a crying fit over one of the other playground kids, Daisy, so Kel tells us to attack him now while he's open. Jesus, how ruthless. This battle took me a while since I hadn't been grinding every possible enemy throughout this mod, and I managed to only ever so slightly win. After beating Kite Kid, Hero explains that he can help him talk things over with Daisy. In exchange, he gives us Burley's ball. Finally. Burley thanks us for our troubles and we can at last head to Flower's house, which turns out to ultimately be an awful mistake. Basil's grandmother tells us an eerily familiar story of a pair of siblings who were pushed to their breaking point, resulting in one of them being pushed from atop a very tall tower. Before I explain exactly how this mod ends, there's some stuff I need to clarify. First, I gotta say, this is the exact moment that made me really excited for the rest of this story. Reformatting the foreshadowing Tomari in the form of this book was an interesting approach and feels appropriate for a OMORI setting, since a storybook is a very childlike way to present this event. Now, it does have some issues. The entire mod does too. But let's start with the most obvious. For one, OMORIBOY is naturally going to run into a problem that a lot of these mods have. For as cool as the storybook setup is, chances are if you're into OMORI enough that you're downloading mods for it, you already know the big reveal. You know the secret burden Sunny is hanging on to throughout the entire game. Provided OMORIBOY is eventually released, it'll be interesting to see if they play a bit more with the concept of what happened to mix it up a little. Maybe the circumstances that transpired between Mari and Sunny aren't exactly the same as what happens in the parent title. 2. Even if someone never played OMORI before, I can understand the argument that this book's allegory is really easy to decipher and consequentially predictable. The original game gave us much less opaque clues to Mari's fate. Lots of the foreshadowing is discernible on repeated playthroughs, sure, but not in the first one. Again, this is an issue many OMORI AUs will run into simply on account of how OMORI's story is written, so it's not a problem that's entirely new. Personally though, I thought the storybook idea was really cool. Speaking in broader terms about this project, the character portraits are definitely strange. The team has done a great job of adapting the art style of the original webcomic to video game form, but I also think this demo serves as an interesting reminder that a lot of the changes Omocat's team made were probably for the better. The more chibi art style of the final draft might be iconic at this point, and hard to picture any other way, but even with that aside, I think the cuter characters suit the game's tone of a childlike, creepy world a lot better than these newspaper comic Wojaks. This criticism might sound harsh, but remember, I'm critiquing what OMORI used to be, and that's what this mod was trying to be from the start, an emulation of that original look. The purpose of the OMORIBOY mod isn't to show off the definitive version of the game, it's about preserving that weird image of what we thought the game might look like many years ago, while also bringing in elements from the old webcomic. Chances are before you started watching this you hadn't heard of this mod because there's so many cool fan projects like this that don't get the exposure they deserve. Click the link to my Twitter account in the description below the subscribe button to stay up to date on when new stuff like this comes out. Sunny escapes Headspace and wakes up in his bed to the sound of knocking at the front door. Trekking past the hallways and living room, we open the door and get our final shot of the OMORIBOY mod.